The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone, to the Financial Planning Successful Strategies for Women webinar. I'm Kimberly Smith, the Giba Wealth Management Assistant, and with me is Kateri Turner, a certified financial planner at Giba, and we are glad you are joining us today. You've told us you learn from real-life examples. The stories we're going over today happen to all be female, yet the information can apply to males just as easily. I'm sure, like me, you've had many mentors, both personally and professionally, male and female, and those that have been and will continue to be good role models in our lives. But today, we are focusing on women. So let's start with the foundation of what makes up a good financial plan. As you can see, there are many moving parts, and they are all interconnected. As one component moves and changes, the others do as well. And depending on your situation, some components are more prominent at different stages of life. Giba does in-depth seminars on almost every one of these financial planning components. If you feel we have mentioned a topic that you would like more information on, or you're wondering why a specific recommendation was given, I encourage you to reach out. We will have contact information at the end of our webinar, or hop onto our website and view some of our previously presented webinars. Additionally, at the end of this webinar, we will be answering some of your general questions. If you have specific questions, we'll have someone reach out and help you with that information. There are generally 5 steps to creating a financial plan. First, you'll jot down your objectives. They can be as simple as, I'd like to have enough money to retire, or grand, like, I want to purchase a second home and do lots of traveling. Next, you'll need to gather together your financial documentation, your leave and earnings statements, retirement estimates, Social Security benefits statements, things like that. Then your financial planner will analyze the data and make recommendations. The more detailed the information you provide to a planner, the more accurate and customized the plan can be. And then you take the next step by putting your plan into action. And finally, you'll monitor the plan and make adjustments as needed. So let's get started with our first case study. Meet Amelia. She has about $118,000 in TSP. She contributes 5% per pay and gets that 5% employer match. She has saved close to $30,000 for a down payment on a house, and now that her student loan is almost paid off, she would like to increase her savings so that she could purchase a home next year. Amelia has some concerns. Thinking ahead, how will the market affect her goals? Is insurance something she should be thinking about at this age? And what can she do now to minimize her tax burden in the future? Kateri is going to go through each of these concerns. Kateri?
Thanks, Kim. So Amelia, like many people, is concerned about our current stock market. We all know that the reason why the market is moving up and down so frantically right now is because of this COVID-19 pandemic and all the uncertainty that's wrapped around in that. None of us really knows how long this is going to last, but right now is not the time we should be making knee-jerk reactions, like taking everything that's in G, putting it into G fund one day, and then back to the C common stock fund the next. There are lots of studies on human nature and investing. In fact, they show us that when the market drops, that's when we tend to panic and sell. We think that we're protecting our investment. Then when the price of stocks goes back up, we feel more confident, we get back into the market. It's almost like we forget about that mantra of buy low, sell high. In this market, there really are some great opportunities, not only to stay invested, but if you can, you could add to your current investments. Because, hey, who doesn't love a good sale? So what's the best strategy right now? I'd say it's just to stay the course. Be confident with the financial plan that you have and stick to it. Whether it's something that you've set up with a financial advisor or you've done yourself, just hang with that plan. A good financial plan is something that it should be set up for all seasons. The good, the bad, and all of this turmoil in between. Now is not the time to go out there and start changing things midstream. However, sometimes market conditions like this can serve as that catalyst to get us moving to either create a plan or to implement some of those plans that have been kind of sitting on the back burner for a little bit. So let's get back to our friend Amelia. Amelia is a young investor, and she's worried that she might not be investing the right way. So the first time I met with her, I really had to give her a thumbs up. She was right on with how she was investing. She was aggressive where she needs to be in her TSP, saving for her really long-term goal of retirement. Then on the flip side, she has an account where she's saving for the down payment on her very first home. And she's conservative there. She's really just looking to protect that principal. So as you can see from this graph, when you invest in stocks, they really have a great potential to give you some significant returns. They are more volatile, but over the long term, it's stocks that help you to not only keep up with inflation, but outpace it. So in terms of cash flow, I had a couple of recommendations for Amelia. I really would like to see her bump up her emergency savings fund. You know, she has a new home right around the corner, and you just never know when you're going to need a hot water heater, some roof repair, something like that. So I'd like to see her have a solid 6 months of expenses in an emergency savings fund. Amelia's done a great job paying off her debt. In fact, she's almost there. She's also done a really good job implementing a budget. In fact, she's used something very similar to what's called a 50-20-30 budget guide. So that's pretty simple. What it means is 50% of your take-home pay goes for things like rent or a mortgage or car payment. 20% is for like retirement savings, repaying college loans, saving for a house. And then 30% is for those wants, you know, the things that we can control, like vacations or how many cable packages you have, stuff like that. The last thing that Amelia and I talked about in terms of her cash flow was to set up a monthly savings plan to help her start saving money for those larger ticket items in the future. So for example, she'll probably be getting a new car in like 8 to 10 years. So she starts putting a little bit away now, so it's really not quite as painful then. So for taxes, Amelia, like most young people her age, you know, all of her income comes from her paycheck. So there's not a lot that we can really change in her tax situation. The one thing that I think for someone her age to consider is whether to do a Roth IRA or a Roth TSP. So Roth accounts would allow her to pay the taxes now in exchange for tax-free growth and tax-free distributions for the life of her Roth account. Younger people like Amelia are often in lower tax brackets because they're just not at their peak earning years. So it's generally thought that they're better off doing the Roth contributions, paying the taxes now at their lower tax rate, and then that would help them to save on taxes in the future. The last thing Amelia and I talked about is I really encouraged her to seek out a CPA to help her with her taxes in the year that she purchases that new house. I just want to make sure that she gets every deduction and tax credit that she possibly can. So as we know, Amelia is a federal employee, and so she knows that her federal pension is a great benefit, but she really has no idea how it would be calculated. So we just did a really quick and easy calculation. I showed her that her pension would be her number of years of federal employment times her high 3 salary times 1%. This pension is part of what's often referred to as a 3-legged stool. Her pension makes up the first leg of the stool, and then the other portions are her thrift savings, TSP account, and Social Security. And when you combine all three, that's what really gives her a successful retirement income package. So Amelia's been doing a really good job with her TSP as well. Kim mentioned that she has $118,000 saved. She's been contributing just 5%, so she could get that 5% employer match. And that's just fine because she's been using all that additional savings to pay down her college loan and to get that down payment ready for her home. She's invested right now in the L2050 fund. This gives her a really nice diversified mix of common stock, international stock, some small cap, as well as a little bit of fixed income. It's tailored to someone who's going to retire in about the year 2050. And this fund will get more conservative as she gets closer to retirement. So like many people her age, Amelia said, well, how much should I have saved for retirement? And a good rule of thumb is that by the age of 30, a person should have about 1 times their salary saved for retirement. Then at the age of about 35, you should have 1.5 to 2 times your salary. So she is definitely on the right track here. So let's look at the insurance component of Amelia's financial plan. In her case, there is not anyone else who depends on her salary for financial support. So she really doesn't need to have a large amount of life insurance. However, it's not unusual for someone her age to be assisting parents, nieces, nephews, other family members. So in terms of life insurance, you always really need to evaluate the need first. A more pressing and often overlooked type of insurance is disability insurance, or as we like to call it, the paycheck protector. So, there's a 50% chance that someone Amelia's age will be unable to work for 90 days or more because of a disability. So as a federal employee, she does have some disability insurance. But if she was to be disabled for more than 1 year, it's only going to make up 40% of her current salary. So there's a significant gap there. I recommended that she take a look at some additional disability insurance. And Giba has a supplemental disability plan, so she's currently looking at that. We chatted a bit. Amelia shared that she's kind of toyed with the idea of doing a deployment at some time. And so we talked about Giba's emergency travel insurance. So if she was deployed and had to come back to the States for any kind of family emergency, that would really help the costs involved there. Kim?
Thanks. And to add, Regarding Social Security, Amelia should get an online account and periodically check her work history record and review changes. And as for legacy planning, make sure her beneficiaries are up to date. And let her loved ones know where important documents are located. And a little recap on what Kateri explained. Amelia needs to focus on her emergency funds as she is working towards meeting her goal to buy her first home. And also disability insurance is something she needs to look into. Women tend to have more cash on hand than men. However, when women do invest, we tend to make very smart decisions. According to a Fidelity Investment study in 2017, women own more diverse portfolios, trade less often, and are less likely to panic in a downturn. Some women have earned up to 1% more than their male counterparts. Amelia has done the most important thing by just starting to act. Now let's meet Nancy. She was out of the workforce raising children for many years, continuing her education and volunteering in the military community. Now she's back in the workforce and ready to invest in her future. Nancy's concerned about being prepared for retirement, how her husband's pension combined with hers will look, and what are some Social Security benefit strategies and taxes. How will this affect her in retirement? Kateri has informative information about Nancy. Kateri?
Thanks, Kim. So let's take a look at Nancy's retirement component. Nancy's husband is a federal employee, so he will be receiving a federal pension. And like Amelia, it's calculated pretty much the same way. His high 3 salary times the number of years of employment times 1%. We figure that he'll be working as a federal employee for about 15 years. So that will give them just under $20,000 as a federal pension. Now, Nancy's spouse is also receiving a military pension, and they've already selected Nancy's survivor benefit from the military pension. So lots of things come into consideration when you're trying to make a decision about a survivor benefit. Do you want to provide your spouse with 50% of your annuity as a survivor benefit? 25%? Or maybe, like Nancy and her husband and I are talking about, you could think about electing no survivor benefit. I know that might sound a little strange, but remember, Nancy and her husband also have the military pension. Because he was in the military, then he joined the ranks as a federal employee, so he's actually entitled to both. So Nancy will get a survivor benefit from the military if her husband predeceases her. So maybe they elect no survivor benefit from the federal pension and just invest the money that they would save. So this is something that Nancy and I and her husband have talked about as possibly a good strategy for them. But his retirement's a solid 13 years away, so it's just one of those things that we'll keep touching on as we do some annual reviews. So Social Security, that's where we spent a lot more time talking because it's a little more complicated and involved. Remember, Giba does an entire 2-hour seminar on all the ins and outs of Social Security. So I'm just going to talk here about the quick answer that Nancy and I worked on. But if you want more details, please look at our Social Security seminar. So a Social Security benefit is based on a calculation that looks at your highest 35 years of earnings. Now remember, with Nancy, she spent many years as a stay-at-home mom where she had very low earnings. As a matter of fact, she even has several years where she had zeros in terms of earnings. So this is going to cause her Social Security benefit to be lower, even though she's earning a pretty nice income right now. So Social Security benefits you are allowed to receive 100% based on your own earnings, 50% of your spouse's Social Security benefit based on your spouse's earnings, or if your spouse predeceases you, then you can get 100% of either yours or your spouse's as a survivor or widow's benefit. For Nancy and her husband, we're going to do a survivor strategy. This is where the couple delays taking the largest Social Security benefit, which happens to be his, and waits until age 70. This is because Social Security will add what is called a delayed retirement credit to his Social Security benefit. So, for example, if Nancy's husband started taking his Social Security benefit at age 67, that's his full retirement age, his benefit would be about $2,400 a month. If he delays until age 70, those delayed retirement credits will increase this amount to just over $2,900 per month. So we're going to let his large Social Security benefit grow even larger, knowing that this is the benefit that will continue to either Nancy or her husband, whoever is the survivor of the two. So Nancy shared that she may want to retire at age 62, help take care of her mom or even some grandchildren in the future. She could start taking her smaller Social Security benefit early, even before her full retirement age of 67. If she elects to do that, Social Security does give her a reduction, but at the same time, it would provide a little bit of extra income to her household. We will continue to have discussions about Social Security, Nancy and I will, and including any of the congressional changes that I'm sure are in the future. And then as they get closer to their Social Security claiming years, then we'll have a final decision to make. Okay, so Nancy worked for a short time before her kids were born, and she had a small 401k from her former employer. She moved that to an IRA rollover account, and she didn't know it, but she really benefited from the rule of 72. That's a little trick that tells you if you take 72 divided by the average interest rate, it tells you how many years it takes for you to double your money. So Nancy started off with about $15,000, and now that account has grown to just under $75,000. She's been able to double her money and then double it again and really boost up her retirement savings. She really made a good move here. You know, sometimes it's hard to resist the temptation of withdrawing and closing out those smaller IRA accounts. But if you keep them invested like Nancy, it really pays off. So Nancy has returned to the workforce now, and she and her husband are actually at the point where they have a little bit of extra cash. And so, you know, they kind of said, Kateri, what should we do with it? So one of the things that really works in her case is to look at just a plain vanilla investment account. It's going to be a taxable account with some stocks or mutual funds. This kind of account has some great benefits for legacy planning, and it also provides the two of them with a little bit more tax diversification in retirement. That's because an investment account is taxed a little bit differently than the two pensions and the retirement accounts. The investment account will be taxed annually on any dividends or capital gains. But capital gains get some preferential tax treatment. It's actually a little bit lower than an ordinary income tax bracket. The other thing that we could look at is a non-qualified tax deferred account. So this is where they would take extra money from their paychecks that's already been taxed, deposit it into the account, and all the earnings are tax deferred. They would not be taxed on the earnings till they withdraw it from the account. This is often very helpful for people in higher tax brackets. So let's look at the tax component for Nancy and her husband. Our conversation centered around tax diversification. So both the pensions, the federal and the military, the Social Security, the TSP, and the IRAs are all going to be taxed as ordinary income. So now is really a good time for the two of them to think about increasing those assets that will be taxed differently, like the investment account we just talked about, or to also increase their Roth IRAs. So one interesting thing to note is with the recent tax law changes at the end of 2017, those actually widened the tax brackets. So as we look at Nancy and her husband, what we find is that they are still in a 24% tax bracket, even with Nancy working and her husband's military pension. Because of this, I think it's a really good time to do a Roth conversion before we have any tax law changes in the future. Another thing that makes it a good time to do a Roth conversion is, the stock market's really low right now. Nancy and her husband could pay taxes now, moving the funds from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. But since the market's low, the taxes that they'll pay in this move are going to be lower. Then you let those funds rebound as the market moves up, and they're rebounding inside the tax-free protection of a Roth IRA account. Kim?
Thanks, Kateri. And to add, looking at insurance, Nancy needs to think about her children aging out of FEDVIP at 22 years old. An option for dental and vision insurance is GIVA, who covers children up to the age of 26, after which the sponsored family member program can kick in. And for legacy planning, updating the beneficiaries to designate the adult-aged children as contingent beneficiaries on her accounts. A few things to recap for Nancy. She should look into an investment account, a way to save and balance the tax burden. Also, she should consider the Roth IRA conversion, as Kateri suggested. Like Nancy, many women tend to gravitate to the caregiver role in their immediate and extended families. In fact, statistics show that women are 3 times more likely to quit their jobs to care for a family member. These same women are often part of a sandwich generation. They're caring for both elderly parents and young children at the same time, a physical and emotional challenge. And this often leads to less money going towards retirement accounts. The sad fact is that women tend to have approximately 22% lower TSP balances than their male counterparts, per OPM data. It is also important for us women to take care of ourselves physically, emotionally, and financially. Former Today Show host Katie Couric lost her husband at the age of 41 to colon cancer. Women are 4 times more likely to outlive their husbands. In fact, 1/3 of all women who become widows are younger than 60. Our Katie lost her husband at 56. There are many concerns for anyone facing a major life event, such as the loss of a spouse. Kateri?
Thanks, Kim. So Katie's concerns are kind of all-encompassing, and I think you'll see as we go through them how much all these components of a financial plan really do intersect and move with each other. So Katie had a life insurance policy on her deceased husband, and she's wondering what to do with these insurance proceeds. What we did is we took $500,000 and invested it in a dividend portfolio. This investment is designed to provide Katie with monthly income that's almost enough to cover her mortgage, while at the same time she retains that large investment account that can be tapped into for future emergencies and, more importantly, keep up with inflation. Oftentimes, people rush to pay off a mortgage with life insurance proceeds. But when you really sit down and think about it, paying off a mortgage with a rate of, say, 3.5% might not always make the most sense, especially when you can invest the money like Katie did. When meeting with Katie, we talked about the rule of 120. So that says if you take 120 minus your age, for her is 56, and that gives you 64. That's the number. It tells us the percentage that she should have invested in stocks. So for Katie, what's really important is to make sure that she will keep up with inflation. We talked about it with both Amelia and Nancy, but the goal is not just to keep up, but to outpace. So Katie's husband was an active federal employee, and since he passed away in service, Katie is eligible for an immediate FERS pension. The pension is based on her husband's number of years of service, his high 3 salary, and then she gets 50% of that as a immediate survivor benefit. So Katie is also eligible to do what is called a spousal continuation on any of her husband's retirement accounts, both the TSP and outside IRA and Roth accounts. If she was to take over these accounts completely as her own, they would be subject to all the IRS rules that apply to Katie at her age of 56. Specifically, since she is under the age of 59 and a half, if she took out money from a retirement account in her own name, she would have to pay an additional 10% IRS penalty tax. So what we did with some of Katie's accounts is we kept them as beneficiary IRA accounts, and we did not do a spousal continuation. This allows her to withdraw money from a beneficiary account without that 10% penalty. We can always go back and do a spousal continuation in the future. So every situation is different based on the age of the spouse or anything, but for Katie, these options really just gave her the most flexibility. As a widow, Katie is able to tap into her deceased spouse's Social Security benefit as early as age 60. Now, I know when we were talking about Nancy, we said that the earliest she could get Social Security was 62. But as a widow, you can tap into Social Security at 60. On the surface, this might sound like a really great deal, but Social Security has what's called an earnings test. And the earnings test says that if you're under your full retirement age, for Katie it's 67, then they are going to take away $1 of Social Security benefit for every $2 that you earn over $18,000. So Katie is a middle school teacher, and she plans to keep working, and she's definitely making more than $18,000 a year. So at this point, we don't have a plan to tap into Katie's Social Security widow's benefit at age 60. One of the neat things that Katie could do with Social Security is what's called a switching strategy. She could take her own benefit first and then switch to her widow or survivor's benefit. And as she gets closer to retirement, then we'll kind of monitor and really fine tune her strategy here. Okay, so in terms of insurance, Katie can continue with the federal health insurance plan, and she can also continue with their GIBA dental and vision insurance. Katie and her husband had actually purchased long-term care policies about 3 years ago. They had selected shared care policies. So that's where you purchase identical policies at the same time from the same carrier with an added feature of being able to share unused benefit back and forth. So since her husband passed away before using any or all of his long-term care benefit, that benefit now transfers over to Katie. And that's in addition to her own benefit. So each of their policies had a benefit pool of $180,000. And each was designed to last for 3 years and came with a 3% annual inflation protection. So now Katie not only has her long-term care policy with a benefit pool of $180,000, but she also just inherited her husband's long-term care benefit of $180,000. So altogether, Katie has long-term care benefits of about $360,000 that should last her about 6 years. And that large benefit pool is going to continue to increase at 3% every single year. Now, Katie continues paying her monthly premium for the long-term care policy, and it's just under about $200 a month. But naturally, her husband's premium goes away. So this is really just a great peace of mind for her. Katie doesn't have to worry about who's going to take care of her as she gets older, or worry about being a burden to her children. So Katie's husband passed away at the end of last year. So this is something that she really wasn't able to take advantage of, but many widows can, so I thought it was something worth mentioning. In the year in which your spouse passes away, you file a joint tax return at the end of the year. So this means that you still have 2 standard deductions and you are using those joint tax tables. So there's often some interesting investment decisions that are worth exploring in this final year. Maybe it's a good time to sell an asset that has a large taxable gain, or do a Roth conversion. It's really just a good time to maybe reposition some assets so that they best meet the future needs of the widow. Kim?
Thanks, Kateri. And to add, she was prepared by having accounts in her name, but Katie will need to focus on maintaining a strong emergency fund. And as for legacy planning, she will need to update her beneficiaries, will, and power of attorney. Due to the unfortunate passing of her husband, Katie has had to make many difficult decisions. And based on her age, it had to be decided if it was better to do a spousal continuation or keep the funds in a beneficiary account. Kateri will need to have regular check-ins with Katie to ensure she is on the right path. In a marriage or any relationship, people tend to naturally fall into roles. One does the dishes, the other mows the lawn. One does the cooking, and the other pays the bills. It can be a challenge when you lose your partner through death, divorce, or for any reason. and now you have to learn some extra household responsibilities. It used to be that more than 50% of women left crucial financial decisions up to their male partners, but not anymore. A recent study by Citigroup showed that 2 out of 3 women handle most of the money management in their household. In fact, it is estimated that by 2028, 75% of global discretionary spending will be controlled by women. Finances really should be a collaboration. It isn't difficult. In fact, we've given you some tools. Remember for Amelia, she used the budget tool, 50, 20, 30. That's 50% of her pay goes to needs, 20% goes to retirement and savings, and 30% for wants. Also, how much one should have saved by a certain age is important information to know. And for Nancy, we discussed the rule of 72 and how long does it take to double your money. And for the rule of 120, discussing asset allocations, Kateri said take 120, subtract Katie's age of 56, and that equals 64, noting the percentage she should have in equities. Money and financial planning doesn't have to be hard, and you don't have to be a human computer to be successful. Now let's meet Diana. She has successfully and consistently invested in her retirement. Meeting her goals to retire and travel are fast approaching. Diana is concerned about protecting the retirement funds she has worked hard to earn. She's wondering what are some strategies to reduce her taxes, also her legacy planning, what she should be planning for, and who can benefit from the assets she has amassed. Kateri?
Thanks. So Diana's big question was what to do with her TSP account. We talked about a bucket approach. That's where we kept some income, like the income she'd need to spend in the next 2 years, in a very low risk conservative account. Next, she has a pool of money with a mid-range goal, and that's invested with a more balanced approach. And then lastly, we invested some of her IRAs, especially her Roth IRAs, for maximum growth, because these are accounts that Diana doesn't plan to touch until she's in her late 70s, early 80s. Like many retirees, Diana had initially moved her entire TSP account to the G fund. Remember our rule of 120. If you take 120 minus 62, Diana's age, she should have about 58% of all her assets in equities. Like we saw with the other women, it's usually the equities that help you to outpace inflation. In Diana's case, we're planning for a long life. In fact, our typical financial plan uses a life expectancy of 95. So we really need to plan to keep up with inflation all those years. For Diana and her husband, their home is one of their largest assets. They don't have a lot left on their mortgage, but we're not looking to pay it off at this point. You know, equity in a home can be great, and you can use it to plan for any number of things. But too often people plan to have the equity in their home be the answer for everything. Like, it'll provide me with retirement income. It will help me with my long-term care expenses, as well as provide the roof over my head. That's not always the best strategy. It can't be the answer for everything. Okay, so for Diana, we explored a bunch of different options for her retirement account. And this is what we came up with as the best. She was a little nervous because most of the people that she knew always selected the maximum survivor benefit of 50%. But in her case, it really made the most sense to do something just a little bit different. So Diana's husband is older than her, and there is also an age difference of several years. So these are two of the factors that led to our decision. Now, if you remember with Nancy, we talked about possibly opting for no survivor benefit. That's not going to work in Diana's case because both she and her husband rely on the federal health insurance plan. And in order for a survivor to remain on the federal health insurance plan, they need to be receiving some sort of survivor benefit, either 50% or 25%. Okay, so what we did for Diana, her federal pension is $3,000 a month. It would cost her $300 per month for a 50% survivor benefit, or $150 a month for a 25% survivor benefit. We decided on the smaller 25% survivor benefit coupled with a life insurance policy. Diana purchased a $300,000 20-year term life insurance policy. She's in very good health, so this policy only cost her $105 per month. So how did we come up with the number of $300,000 for the life insurance policy? Well, we backed into that number. If we invested $300,000 at 6% today, that could provide Diana's husband with $1,600 a month all the way up to his age 95. And that even allows us to increase his $1,600 per month to keep up with inflation every year. So to recap, Diana's taking a 25% survivor benefit that is going to cost her $150 a month. The life insurance costs her $105. So her total cost is $255 a month. This benefit, what this benefit buys is pretty significant. If Diana was to predecease her husband, he would receive $750 a month as that 25% survivor benefit. And in addition, he would have the invested life insurance proceeds that would generate about $1,600 a month. So his total benefit would be about $2,350 a month. This plan not only reduces Diana's cost, but it also increases a benefit. But probably the best thing it does is it allows for flexibility. If Diana's spouse should die first, she can simply change the beneficiaries on the life insurance to their children. Or she always does have the option of simply canceling the policy as well. So for taxes, Diana's pension is going to be taxed as ordinary income. 85% of her Social Security will also be taxed as ordinary income. She will be able to manage her taxes a little bit because they do have some Roth IRA accounts. Whenever they withdraw funds from these Roth IRAs, those distributions will be tax-free, so they won't affect their tax returns at all. Since Diana's husband is over 70, they have decided to have him do what's called a qualified charitable deduction. And this will also help to reduce their taxes. So every year, Diana and her husband donate money to their church. If this donation is paid out of his IRA account directly to the church or charity, then it's not taxable at all. You don't have to worry whether you're itemizing or not. So that's just a great perk. You have to be over 70 to be able to do that. So they've just funneled what would have been their joint charitable deductions to come right out of his IRA accounts. In terms of a legacy component for Diana, every individual is able to gift up to $15,000 per year to any number of people. Diana and her husband will probably do some gifting to their children. This will help the children with some major purchases, as well as help Diana to start transferring some of her wealth. 529 college savings plans are a great way to pass on the gift of education to your family. In fact, Diana and her husband are thinking of starting some 529s for their grandchild, and even for some grandchildren yet to be born. Now, every state treats the tax deductibility of these 529 contributions a little bit differently. Diana lives in Virginia, and Virginia has some neat advantages. For example, if you're over 70, like Diana's husband, you get an unlimited deduction off your Virginia state tax return for contributions made to 529 college savings plans. Now, normally that deduction is capped out at around $4,000, but in Virginia, it's unlimited if you are over 70. In addition, GIBA has the Virginia 529 college savings plan. We offer that at no sales charge as an employer-sponsored plan. So that could work out really nice for them. Kim?
Thanks. So she has options for Social Security, and this is a decision that will require some consideration. Diana will need to keep her long-term care trusted contact up to date, and something she should look into is umbrella insurance. It can provide coverage for injuries, property damage, certain lawsuits, or personal liability situations. And as she is preparing to retire, Diana must elect a survivor benefit plan option to ensure her husband can keep a federal health insurance plan. And as for estate planning, she needs to decide who will inherit her assets. There are many components to a financial plan. These are just profiles of some of our members, how they have been successful, and how we've been able to help them. In the interest of time, there are some common situations that we did not cover, such as both spouses are federal employees, if there's a divorce, or someone left a federal job and now owns their own business. Everyone is unique, and so is their financial situation. Hopefully, you've been able to find bits and pieces that apply to your individual story. But most of all, don't compare your finances to anyone else. We each have a different story, a different path to success, and what works for one person doesn't always work for another. And for those of you who don't know, GIBA is a nonprofit association and was established by NSA employees in the 50s. They did not have many federal benefits, so GIBA was created to fill that gap. Since then, we've been able to offer a wide variety of insurance and financial services to all federal employees, retirees, contractors, and military personnel. We currently serve about 17,000 members. As a nonprofit, GIBA has been able to go out and get competitive pricing, lower fees, and higher rates. We pass all of that on to our members. GIBA has a very robust scholarship program. Every year, we give out up to 40 $2,500 scholarships to GIBA members or to children and grandchildren of GIBA members. We have a member education award, and this is for members going back to school, or in our case of Amelia, a GIBA member, she can apply the award to help pay off her existing loans. GIBA has salaried financial advisors who can focus on providing you with solid, unbiased advice. All of our advisors are chartered federal employee benefits consultants. which means they are experts on your federal benefits and can discuss options to complement your current plan. Here are the insurance and financial planning programs we can help you with here at GEBA. We can also help your family members through our sponsored family member program. Like Nancy, whose children need dental and vision insurance. Family members can also reach out to GEBA for financial planning, college savings, and other needs. So this is the point in our presentation where we can answer your questions. Feel free to type them in, and we'll see what we can answer now. If they're more specific, we'll have someone reach out to answer your questions and give you more information. Kateri?
Sure. While you're taking this time to type in any questions, I want to share with you one last story. This is a tribute to a former GEBA member and a friend, Alice. Alice recently passed away in February at the age of 101. And although we haven't researched it at GEBA, I do think that she was probably our oldest GEBA member. She and her husband were both federal employees, and they did a great job of saving for themselves and for their children. I'm sure that her road was not always easy, and like some of the other women we highlighted today, Alice faced challenges that could have thrown her off course, but she adjusted as she needed and persevered. Alice has been able to leave a legacy to each of her 5 children. Each of them inherited some money from their mom. Some used their inheritance to enhance their own retirement income, to help with the purchase of a home, and even to assist Alice's great-grandchildren. I feel so privileged to have been able to meet Alice on several occasions and to have worked with each of her 5 children. Alice has been able to pass down the legacy of GEBA as her children have worked with us and become GEBA members. But more importantly, Alice's financial success has enabled her to pass to her family a legacy of love. So this wraps up our presentation today. As you sign off, you'll be prompted to take a survey. We appreciate any feedback because it lets us know what kind of information you find most useful. Tomorrow, we will send you an email which will provide contact information in case you want to reach out to us for any assistance. But more importantly, it will provide you with a link so you'll be able to go back and review this webinar. Or you can even forward it on to a friend who you think might be able to benefit. So I will take a look at some questions now, but thank you so much for joining us. So one of the questions is about, will you get the slides? Yes, so the link to the presentation will be everything you've heard us say, as well as these slides that you've seen as well. And let's see what other. And so somebody asked about, on their leave and earnings statements, when they see words that say like retire and FERS, what does that mean? So you are required to, a little bit of every paycheck goes to help support that FERS pension that we talked about. Your agency contributes a large percentage, most of the percentage, but you are also required to contribute as well. Okay, and somebody asked about, any financial planning services. So we do have that at GEBA. We can, help you at anything you really want there. We're licensed investments and insurance, so we can help you with that. Let's see if there's any other questions here. So somebody said, what's the typical cost for financial planning? And so at GEBA, we will do an initial financial plan for you that's free of charge. Our hope is that maybe you'll find some investment or insurance products that we offer that you might like, but the first one's free of charge. And then after that, we can kind of go through and tell you if there's one particular product you like, how much that costs, and so on. Okay, so somebody, thank you for your comment that you'd like to see someone next time who's retired and receiving a pension. We will definitely keep that in mind. Let's see here. So in terms of what document would you use for financial planning? So if you reach out to us and you say, I'd like some help with financial planning, we will send you a questionnaire. It's like about 8 pages. And like Kim said, it's going to tell you all the documents to gather together. It'll give you places to kind of fill in different questions. It's really going to guide you through that. And then like when I get somebody's information, I'll look through it. And if I have questions, I'll pick up the phone or I'll shoot them an email if I need a little further clarification when I'm putting something together for them. So there are different agencies that might have slightly different calculations of their pensions. In the interest of time, we had to go with a 90% solution. So if you are someone who works for an agency where you know that you're maybe required to retire early or something like that, again, reach out to us because we can help you with those details. How do you start a Roth IRA? Really simple. GIBA can help you with a Roth IRA. It's a matter of how you want to invest it. Do you want it really conservative? Are you young and are you looking for future growth? So maybe we want some mutual funds. An application is maybe about, 4 pages or so. And then, talk to someone so you really understand what it is you're signing when you sign those. But yeah, pretty easy stuff to do there. So question about online consultations. So right now we're doing a lot of go-to meetings with this current COVID-19. We do usually meet with people one-on-one. We'll come to you. We'll meet at a location, a mutually agreed upon location. But yeah, right now in this environment, go-to meetings working pretty good. Yep, and we even work with people in Hawaii. Yeah, and everyone's situation is different. Some people have lots of kids like Alice, some people have none, some people have no spouse, other people, have a spouse and an ex-spouse. And so I think we're pretty well tuned to be able to answer those individual questions and those scenarios for you. Should you email a specific person at GIBA? So we have a general inbox, giba@giba.com. But when we send you the email tomorrow, we'll provide you with a couple different email addresses. So you can really, I think my direct email address will be on there as well as the general one. So either or, whatever works for you, you can email. I'm glad you liked the Social Security information. And I think that thank you for your kind words. Yes, we can do Virgin Islands as well. You know, I'm scrolling through and I hope I kind of got to everything that everyone was asking. Again, in the survey, you can also type in some very specific questions if you'd like someone to get back to you on that. So I think with that, Kimberly and I will wrap up today. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us, and stay safe. Thank you.